Raise your hand if you've ever felt like you were falling behind in life. Well, that was me too. As a matter of fact, I've always wondered, what happens when you run out of options but life keeps going anyway? Sometime in December 2018, I was sitting in my small room. I was crying so hard I could barely breathe. At that time, my rent was overdue and my savings were gone. And on that day, I made the hardest decision of my life. I dropped out of college. It felt like the end. But in hindsight, it was the beginning of a new dimension of who I could become. That breakdown became the axis of change, the very point my life started to turn. I'm sure you've heard the famous line, change is inevitable, that the only constant in life is change. But no one really talks about how personal, disorienting, and how transformative change can be. I know this because I've learned that change doesn't wait for permission. It just comes up, uninvited, unexpected, and most often, unwanted. So in that moment of helplessness, I was faced with a choice. To stay stuck with what I lost, or to show up with what I still had. So I showed up in so many areas of my life. First, as the eldest daughter who had to hold it together, be a good example, and make less to zero mistakes in life. And then, as a young woman, applying for jobs even though she felt she's unqualified. And then as a freelancer, was navigating a completely new industry. And eventually, as a creative, a coach, a leader, and a community builder. And now, someone standing here in front of you. But showing up didn't always look like winning. To me, it looked like joining calls with shaky hands, sending tons of emails that only got rejections, and then showing up in a room full of accomplished people. But every time I did that, something shifted. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. The power of showing up. So what is showing up really? It's not just a one-time decision. It's more than that. It's a mindset, a habit, a daily act of courage to move forward when it's easier to stay hidden. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present. It is speaking when your voice shakes. It is trying again, even when you're unsure. It is choosing to show up, messy, uncertain, but still moving forward. And if there's anything that life has taught me about showing up, it's this. It leaves you with lessons you cannot learn any other way. Lessons that you can only uncover by living through them. And here are 3 lessons that I've learned about it. First, showing up is louder than self-doubt. People think that confidence is loud, but I believe that showing up in the face of fear is louder. When I started freelancing, I have just resigned from my corporate job in the middle of the pandemic. I'm sure you'll say it wasn't the wisest decision to do at that time. But because I have this vision, I have this huge passion to see something for myself, what's in it for me to be in that space. And so I did I showed up without equipment, no mentor, and no idea of what was I getting into. That act alone has changed everything for me, showing up in the face of fear. The second thing is, showing up makes room for grace. When I dropped out of college, I carried shame. I felt like I'm a failure, and I felt like I failed my family. But it isn't showing up that helped me reframe that moment. That version of me didn't quit. She chose to pause, to pivot, and preserve her potential. And lastly, showing up creates ripple effects. Back in March, my 14-year-old half-sister had asked me to fill out an assignment for her. Apparently, it was about the woman that she looks up to in celebration for Women's Month. I told her, there's so many amazing women out there. There's gotta be someone that you could look up to but me. But you know what she did? She gets back to me and said, of course, you're my idol. As funny and cringy as it sounds, that moment stayed with me, and it stayed right here. You'll never know who's watching you show up. Look around you. All of you showed up here today. Showing up isn't just for you. Today, I get to mentor thousands of students from all over the world, people from Southeast Asia and the Philippines. I've led global creative teams, worked in the cybersecurity space, an industry that is male-dominated. I've spoken on international stages, launched startups, and built a community, all without a mentor, a blueprint. And I have no idea of what was I getting into. Because of that passion to find out my purpose, what's the reason why I am spared at that desperation, at that breakdown. Once again, showing up isn't just for you, but it's also for the people that your journey will empower. If I had not shown up at that time, I wouldn't be here today and I wouldn't be having this story at all. So, the next time that you feel that life is uncertain, when the path isn't clear, and when the fear feels louder than your faith, I hope you remember this. That you don't have to be ready to change your life. You just have to show up for it. Because honestly, every brave thing that I've done in my life didn't start with confidence. It began with presence, with a decision, and ultimately with a choice. To show up even when it's hard. To show up especially when it's hard. That's the power. That's the invitation. And that's the legacy we leave behind. That there is power in showing up. Thank you for showing up today.